Good afternoon and welcome once again. This week saw a peaceful voting day in Zimbabwe and a somber counting process the next day until things turned sour during the announcement of preliminary results. And what seemed a smooth electoral process is now turning into an anti-climax as the media was earlier prevented from attending an MDC media briefing by the police. And with Nelson Chamisa declaring that the MDC has won the election, this may taint the whole poll. But all is not wasted as the final results have to be announced until after 5 days. And of course, it is tomorrow and perhaps after Saturday and going forward. The country has to regroup, move on and restore its economy. And today we focus on the tourism sector in Zimbabwe. And we have Unathi Sonwabile Henama, a tourist expert at the Tshwane University of Technology, who says that peaceful elections are the means to reopen the country for tourists. And let him expatiate on that. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Now, tell us about Zimbabwe being open for business. After Saturday, the country has to move on. Will it be open for business?
It can, but we require a clear message from Zimbabwe that they're open for business. And with them having the big falls and a lot of nature parks, it's a great opportunity to use that to drive the economy, just like in the past, because if you look at Zimbabwe, when they started having these problems, the majority of their tourists went to Zambia. Tourists were going to Zambia for the big falls. So it is important that this moment, Zimbabwe's 1994, is well used to plan for the future. And tourism is a sector that can assist in that new reality. But the violence has to stop.
All right. Zimbabwe had Robert Mugabe, and during that time, there was a very low risk appetite to visit the country. But since January this year and going forward, the Hotel and Tourism Association of Zimbabwe said that the numbers had substantially increased. So what makes Zimbabwe interesting to visit now?
Well, President Mnangagwa, immediately after he took power, he actually has led the SADC region in terms of tourism reform. For example, they declared open skies so that any aviation player can come into Zimbabwe and bring tourists. And then they also announced visas on arrival for SADC residents, which is great because it is promoting more tourism trade. When we speak about tourism competitiveness, these two measures will always ensure that a destination that does this will always benefit from what? Increased tourism revenue and lower poverty.
Now, at the moment, when there are skirmishes in Zimbabwe, what do you think about the sentiment of the country? I mean, going forward, the country has to really now focus on turning the economy around in terms of sentiment. Now, this belligerence that's going on and the opposition saying that it's declaring itself winners of this poll, what do you make out of that?
Well, it's unfortunate that there was a bit of lack of transparency during the election and all of these challenges. But I believe that the MDC Alliance has been very, very clear in their press release this afternoon that they will undertake constitutional and take the matter to court. So in other words, they are not saying there must be violence. And from the side of the government of Zimbabwe, obviously the police must be in the streets to maintain law and order. But we have to move forward from there. So in other words, they must initiate a tourism crisis management plan right now to avert a negative image, because tourists are very averse of destinations where there is challenges with their personal safety and security.
Now, this $185 million, or rather rent investment in the tourism sector, do you think it will ignite this industry?
It can, but you obviously require the state to collaborate. The tourism sector is a coordination intensive where you require different ministries to work together to make it nice for tourists to come to a destination. For example, a lot of South Africans would like to go to Mozambique, but when they hear about the stories that they'll meet multiple roadblocks and have to bribe, has actually led to people not trying to go to Mozambique. So in other words, we require the state to be at the forefront of making the experience great. Remember, tourism is big business, and it's a way to trade for countries. And if you look in the majority of countries in Africa, tourism brings the greatest amount of foreign exchange to those countries. So it is a big, big industry.
But when you are at the Vic Falls, are you really in Zimbabwe? I mean, there's a difference between just a tourist site and getting into the actual Zimbabwe itself.
Yeah, I agree. Zimbabwe, I mean, the big falls will be like Cape Town. You know, it's an opportunity for people to know, okay, there's this big attraction. Then it's a responsibility of the tourism authorities in Zimbabwe to ensure that people spend more money and they travel more of Zimbabwe. So this is a time which is ripe with the opportunity for them to market destination Zimbabwe.
Now, when it comes to tenable road conditions where one is able to drive to Zimbabwe, secondly, we've heard that the on-the-spot fines were removed, the roadblocks were also done away with. But when it comes to potholes and some roads which are unsafe, what image is that projecting, or rather is being projected by Zimbabwe as a country to visit?
Well, Zimbabwe has those challenges, just like, I mean, in South Africa, there are several provinces that have the very same problem. That's why I said the tourism sector is coordination intensive. It is important that you, as the tourism ministry, they will speak with the ministry responsible for roads to say, we need world-class roads because tourists are here for enjoyment. And then these world-class roads then also benefit the locals. The same thing in Soweto. Had the tourists never come to Soweto, Soweto will not have this world-class infrastructure from a roads perspective that it has today. So tourism has got this developmental impact on society because it forces the government to treat citizens much better.
Now, when you take a look at driving to Zimbabwe and you use the Beitbridge border, you know that it is very tedious and cumbersome to go there. And if you're on holiday, would you like to really spend 6 hours at the border trying to cross over?
Most definitely. You know, Beitbridge is one of the biggest challenges that we need to fix in Africa because it is the most busiest land-based border post in the southern hemisphere. And we need a strong Zimbabwe that's economically active that will be able to put pressure on the South African authorities because you go there when you're in Zimbabwe, coming to South Africa, the experience is okay. The problem is on the South African border, you know. So we must have that conversation. And if we want to drive tourists between the two countries, we have to fix Beitbridge.
Going forward, do you think the numbers of tourists will shoot up this year as the Zimbabwe Tourist Association, as well as the Minister of Finance, or shall I say former for now, that they're going to see an improvement in the sector?
Yes, there will be an increase, but they must use this 1994 moment. They must use it very well. They must, the president must come out and indicate that Zimbabwe is open for business. They must market them. They must speak to tour operators in South Africa and everywhere and put Zimbabwe back on the tourism map to ensure that they use tourism to drive their economy. So it is possible, but it requires leadership.
Right. We are speaking to Unathi Sonwabile Henama, who is a tourism expert at the Tshwane University of Technology. We're going to take a break and